Hey there, it is Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
If you're watching YouTube Live or Facebook Live, there on the screen, Vanessa and Scott Martindale, they have a great book, Blended and Redeemed, the go-to field guide for the modern step family. They've got a story of their own. Guys, how are you?
We're wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having us today.
Well, we're glad you're here. We were talking before we went on, and you're Texan. So, and as Rick always says, we have to have at least one Texan on a week. So now we have two, and you're from my hometown of Dallas. So glad you guys are here. Thanks for being on with us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for what you guys have done. Your experience, you've had challenges and victories, and you decided to put it in book form to communicate to so many folks that are dealing with the same things. As I read this, a Blended and Redeemed, the go-to field guide. It is a field guide, isn't it? Something that you can use for the challenges that happen. As I mentioned before we went live, Dan, a professional counselor, as well as a radio talk show host. I've been a pastor on just about every level since '89. We've faced these families, which we love and adore, but some of these families have been able to progress and get victory in some areas, and some they just gave up, and it's sad. So you have a story. Where do you want to begin? With your own story, maybe?
Absolutely.
Sure. So
yeah,
we've been married for almost 9 years. Almost 9 years. And
you have to think about that, and you have to be corrected because sometimes we get it wrong.
The good thing is I have her to correct and to make sure that I stay on track. So that makes it good. So we have 4 sons. Vanessa was married previously, has 1 son, and then we have 3 together. And, you know, uniquely, I mean, we're a blended family. So, and then like you, Dan, I'm also a licensed therapist. Vanessa is in her master's degree in marriage and family therapy. So eventually we'll be 2 therapists married together, which will make for some really interesting conversations. It'll be a lot of fun. Vanessa, why don't you tell about the ministry?
Yeah. So Scott, we also both grew up in blended families. So I grew up in a blended family and Scott did as well. So we know the blended life. But a little bit about our story and kind of how our ministry came to fruition in the book. We found ourselves in a really tough season. We call it our wilderness season, so to speak. And we were in a custody lawsuit with my ex-spouse, unfortunately. And that went on for about a year, and I had reached out to the local church in search of biblically based step family resources and step family groups, anything that we could be a part of for people who were in our exact situation that could just give some encouragement and hope and just advice. And when I reached out to the local church, unfortunately, there wasn't anything available. And throughout that season, God ultimately performed a miracle in our situation. We do now have a good co-parenting relationship with my ex-spouse. And after that season, the Lord called us into ministry. Not anything that we would have ever anticipated or had expected. But it was really sweet that he just asked us to use what we had gone through and partner with him to help other families like ours in those situations and to just bring them a hope, which is Jesus, but also give any encouragement or advice that could help them along their journey as well.
It's so needed too. I work more with youth, teens, and especially teen boys, and a lot of the people that I see come in are in blended families, and while kids can adjust and do adjust fairly well, it does bring baggage with it and can create issues that they don't even realize might be connected to the divorce and then being blended and whatnot. And so I'm love that you guys made this and what you call a field guide. It's more than just a book. When I think of a field guide, I think of, okay, well, if I break my leg, let me look and see what I do here. I do this. Talk about why it's the field guide and just how important it is, at least in my aspect for kids.
Yeah. So let's start kind of where the book started. As the ministry started 2.5 years ago, that was Blended Kingdom Families. About I was probably 6 months into the ministry. We started thinking about a resource. We started thinking about how we wanted to go about bringing a resource to the community. And the first thing we did is we embarked on what we called the Blended Kingdom Project. And that was a opportunity for us to go out and interview blended families. So we interviewed about 60 families from really all over the world, from South Africa to the UK, Canada, all over the United States, every different walk of life. We sat down with each one of these couples for an hour-long interview, and then we did a long kind of survey and just gathered a bunch of data about what these families face, what they struggle with, what are the most common issues they find. And so that information, coupled with our story, coupled with the scriptural backing, that is really how the book Blended and Redeemed was birthed. And use the term field guide. I love the term guide. She was not a fan of the word guide, but I think it's a great, because people look at it and when they see the word guide, they look, how do I?
Right.
And really the thing that I love so much about the book is it really is kind of an A to Z kind of picture of what blended family life is like. Everything from the spiritual side, which we really, really focus a lot on, to the practical sides, to dealing with the tough subjects like litigation, dealing with the tough subjects of co-parenting. It really kind of covers the entire gamut, the best we could, and the best the project kind of enabled us to bring that resource to the masses.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Well,
Vanessa.
and I was going to say, it was a lot of what we talked about. It was just the common themes that we were hearing throughout the project and what we found in that data. So a lot of what we wrote about were a lot of the issues that blended families were facing. I mean, you wouldn't think that what the child calls the step parent is a big deal, but that came up in about 90% of our conversations.
Yeah.
And so, just navigating even the things like that. And so that was a big part of it as well.
Scott and Vanessa Martindale, great book. We recommend, even if you're not a blended family, get it, because we all have relatives, friends, co-workers that are a part of a blended family in some way. Blended and Redeemed, the go-to field guide for the modern step family. I'm glad you brought up interviewing those folks, because I have my own questions here. Are there like the top 3 things that all those families have said, yeah, I could understand that, sure? What are you going to call the new dad or the well, I guess they call them bonus dads and bonus moms now is the thing to call them. But do you have a top 3 that pretty much every one of them face?
Yeah. I would start with, let's just start with marriage. I know that when we talk about blended families, I know a lot of the time the focus goes right to the children. And really, the great thing about this book is we focus a lot on marriage, and really focusing on that priority of not only keeping Christ at the top of your pyramid and the top priority of your life, but marriage is number 2 and kids are number 3. So really, I'm going to use the term drilling down and just kind of talking directly to couples to say, you've got to put focus on your marriage. You cannot let the children and being a blended family dominate everything else. So that's number 1 for us.
Yeah. And I think speaking into that, being somebody that went through the divorce and seeing my son go through that when we were married, that was a very big challenge, because I didn't want to cause any more harm to our son and I wanted to protect him. And so it was this, we already had this bond, so to speak, that, he was kind of in the passenger seat, and that really changes when you get married. My husband's now in the driver's seat, I'm in the passenger, and my son's in the back seat. And so really understanding that dynamic. And so just, learning to do it that way and do it biblically, so to speak, it really sets that foundation for your blended family. And then I would say another one that's a big one that we get a lot is when step parents don't feel like they love their stepchildren the same as their biological children. And we like to just put air back in the room and say, you know what, that's okay. God created us all individually unique, beautifully unique. The way that each child receives love, receives affirmation, it is different. Everybody's love language is different. So if you don't love them the same, that's okay. Scott always talks about, but we can love with the same intentionality and intensity.
Yeah. I love that. And it just in talking about the book, it says, those who have been through the ups and downs personally, and it's so easy to focus on, the problems that can come with blended families, but talk about the ups. I mean, obviously there's good parts of it as well. Talk about the ups that you find.
Yeah. I think a lot of this from the step parent perspective. And if you're listening to this in any format and you're a step parent, those are really highs and low valleys. And so you'll find some really low spots, but there are some incredible high spots too. The fact that you get to be, Rick, you used the term bonus dad or bonus mom. You're a bonus. You're an addition to their life. You can be more. That child can be more because of you. Those are really high notes. And, again, you may not get to experience them every day, but God called certain people to be in that role. And if you're in it, he's called you to be in it.
Yeah.
And you can do this. You can persevere through the lows and get to those high points. It just may take some time.
Scott Vanessa Martindale, the book is called Blended and Redeemed, the go-to field guide for the modern step family. Dan, if we can keep them another segment, I'd love to keep them. Guys, if you're up for it, let's keep you another segment.
Great. Yeah.
We'll do just a little stop here and say, hey, welcome to Faith Talk Live. We're having a great time. It's the Blended and Redeemed book from Vanessa and her husband, Scott Martindale, the go-to field guide for the modern step family. Dan and I have been talking, and Dan and I have both separately had experiences with families that have blended. And I don't know that I would say that maybe none of them were prepared for it, but possibly some. But it's easy to prepare beforehand. But once you get in the fire, it gets a little hot in there. And thank God for your field guide, because it's no doubt helping so many people. Dan and I used to work with a gentleman at the station, and he had been married, and him and his wife had a son, and they divorced, and then I think they both got remarried. And I love this. I've never seen this, sadly, is that they loved their son so much, and they were so giving on both sides. They couldn't be married together, but they knew how to parent. So they both lived in the same neighborhood to make sure that the son, because they got, that he was, mutual, always there, taken care of, school functions. It's a beautiful thing. But that's not always the case. It's a very tough thing. And thank you again for your sacrifices, what you've gone through and what you've penned. How long has this been out? Is it out yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is available. It just released 2 weeks ago?
No, last September 13th.
September 13th.
September 13th.
And it's available on Amazon. You can also go to our publisher, XO Marriage. It's available there, or you can go to blendedandredeemed.com and you can order that as well. And it's not only just the book, it also comes with an accompanying study guide that's available that you can teach small group classes. And it also has a pastoral guide that you can give to your pastor to say, hey, this is what this resource is.
That's so good. What have you heard so far from folks that have not only read the book, but also connected with Blended Kingdom Families, the ministry that you guys have?
Yeah, the overall message that we get is just hope. I think after reading the first chapter and second chapter, we get a lot of people who just talk about, oh my gosh, that just gave me so much hope for our situation, or that they're in that exact situation. The first chapter is really about our fire season, the wilderness season that I was talking about earlier. And so I think, and that's really the heart behind the book, is that one, people know who hope is, and that's Jesus, and that they can experience him and just receive any practical or spiritual encouragement through it.
I'm curious. You talk about the fire season. Does that usually come after a few years? Is it like right as you get married and things are getting started, or is that when it's kind of the honeymoon phase and you think, oh, this is not so bad, everything's going to be fine, and then you go through the fire season? What have you found?
I would say it's different for everybody. I think blending families, and one of the unique things is there's probably 100,000 different combinations of variations of what a blended family looks like.
Right.
I think in our experience, I think when you have little kids, it's a different kind of fire season. And as the kids kind of go into that teenage, young adult kind of years, you'll have different types of fire seasons. So it really just depends. A lot of it depends on, how tumultuous your divorce was and how much pain was caused there, and was there healing done, and Rick, you said that so beautifully about there are some blended families that really do it in a positive, healthy way. Unfortunately, that's probably not the majority. So a lot of that just depends on what the circumstances are. And everybody who's listening to this that identifies can probably say, this is our fire season. Mm-hmm. Either we've gone through it, or we're going through it, or we see it coming.
Yeah.
Blended and Redeemed, the field guide. Go to the field guide for the modern step family there. The Martindales have put this together. Plus, they've got blended kingdom families. Amazing. I love what you said about that. You focus on the marriage, because from what we've seen over the years, and you guys are the experts, but from what we've seen, sometimes there's division. The kids sometimes can cause division. The exes can cause, they can be late by bringing a child back from the weekend, blah, blah, blah. I've seen that over and over again. But I love what you say to strengthen the marriage. It's almost like the whole plane thing, right? They say when the oxygen masks come down, the adult gets the oxygen first, and then you take care of the kids. Now, I did want to say this. We're coming up on the holidays, which it can be brutal for blended families. Would you say that, and this is easier said than done, isn't it? Not to wear your feelings on a sleeve. If your child wants to change up and possibly spend the holidays with the other parent, you don't get your feelings on a sleeve, but just kind of roll with it. Would you say? What's your wisdom there?
You want to take this one, or you want me to?
I think speaking into that, I think one of the things that we always encourage is just early communication. And we talk about this in the book. So if you have a healthy co-parenting relationship, even if you don't, just trying to create certain times, maybe that's meeting biannually or quarterly, where you're talking about the big things that are coming up. So like holidays and kind of your plan. And if the child is of an age that they have that emotional intelligence, you can include them on that and see what it is that they want to, what they would like to do. But oftentimes we find that if you can have that healthy co-parenting communication, it really prevents any discord or confusion happening later down the line, or any parents possibly getting their feelings hurt because the child wants to do this or the child wants to do that. Now, we know that children change their minds at the drop of a hat.
No, never.
Yeah. we have 4, so we know. But I think, Scott and I always talk about, especially during the holidays, extending that olive branch. So maybe if you don't have a healthy co-parenting relationship, and just praying and asking, what is something that I can do to extend? And if the child wants to go, let them go for an extra day. Or maybe if they're supposed to come back at a certain time by dinner, maybe they have dinner with them and then come back after that. Maybe it's doing something a little here and there that can, again, extend the olive branch and build a bridge, so to speak, between the co-parents, but also letting the child thrive in that situation and in that season or holiday season.
That's something that you guys talk about is statistic, and of course, we hate to hear that 50% of marriages in the church end up in divorce, but 70% of blended family marriages end up in divorce, which is just staggering and terrible to think about. So let me ask you, what do you guys personally do to kind of dial down and make sure you have time to yourselves and work on that marriage?
Tell our kids, stay out of our bedroom. Number one.
I don't want to hear that, Mom.
They don't want to go in there. No, I think that in a lot of people, it's a great kind of laugh joke, but it's true. Yeah. You've got to make your marriage a priority. You have to make sure that you're pouring into each other. And I want to lead with this quote. If a divorce is what hurt your children, a healthy marriage is what will heal them.
That's good.
And that's so true with kids. So the things that we do that we encourage other couples to do, number one is we do a vision retreat every year. We use a resource through Exo Marriage that was written by Jimmy Evans to do a vision retreat. It's just a time for us to get away. We are incredibly busy. Everybody is incredibly busy. So taking that time, just Vanessa and I, we take a 2-day trip, whether that's, 2 days in a staycation or 2 days, somewhere, just us getting away. And we have kind of a guide that we go through and we talk about, where we are, where we're going, what are our goals, what are we doing? So that's number one. Number two is we do regular date nights, trying to make sure that we're still dating each other. We do a lot of marriage conferences. So Vanessa and I are a little overkill. We go to probably, 10 to 12 marriage conferences a year because we speak at a lot of them, but we get to spend a lot of time doing that. So I always encourage couples, if you're in an area where you can pour into a marriage conference, man, go. It will be a good experience. What else can you think of, babe?
I would say, just having godly, faithful community, having those errands. I mean, we had to have errands in that season to lift us up when we were weary. And so I think having a life group, having a home group, everybody calls it different. But, having a group where you have other couples that can pour into your marriage, that you're pouring into theirs, and that they can keep you accountable. And they can pray for you whenever you are having those, difficult seasons or wilderness seasons or fire seasons. And then we make sure that we take intentional time every day to meet at the end of the day after the kids are bed. We have one-on-one time where we sit and we talk. And in the book, we also talk about having a weekly marriage meeting and business meeting. So marriage meeting is more focused on our marriage, but the business meeting is more the things of the house, the kids' schedule. But we're constantly in communication. So that's important.
I think it's good to keep those separate because a lot of times the business meeting can lead to a lot of fights in the family meeting. Yeah, good.
Wow, that's great. I love that. Some great wisdom there. Hey, we'd love to have you guys back if you're up for it, maybe in December.
Absolutely.
We'd like to catch up for you. Do you have a podcast by chance that folks can listen to you as well?
Yes, it's the Blended Kingdom Families podcast.
Awesome.
And it's on all streaming platforms. You can also watch us live in studio. We film in studio. It's kind of like a blended family talk show, but you can also watch it on YouTube as well at Blended Kingdom Families.
Wow. Cool. Guys, good stuff. We love this. Thank you so much again for your sacrifices, your victory, sharing it all and putting it in book form and podcast form as well. BlendedKingdomFamilies.com. A great place to go to. The new book, Blended, the Field Guide, we're going to call it, the Blended and Redeemed, the go-to field guide for the modern step family. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.